Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to do our NFC Predictions 2024 Revisited. Before we begin, if you have not watched the AFC video, I highly recommend you check that out. And talking about the NFC, I honestly did not see. Some of it I did saw coming, but some of it I didn't see coming. Unfortunately, I did not get the result of the NFC that I wanted. And I'm not going to waste much time. Let's dive in. Let's start off with the Dallas Cowboys. They went 7-10 last season, and most of their seasons was marred by injuries, inconsistent play, poor play particularly at home, and the lack of urgency that pretty much cost Mike McCarthy's demise as Dallas Cowboys head coach. And a lot of people said the record wouldn't be the same if Dak would have got hurt. The team was 3-6 when he was on the field, or 3-5. They actually won more games with Cooper Rush than they did with Dak Prescott this year. Go show you how underwhelming and kind of bad the Cowboys are. And they received the ultimate karma when the season ended. Now, my prediction was 10-7, and I knew that the Cowboys was going to fall off a bit of a cliff. I thought the fall off was going to be a little slight, given that one, they play in the NFC East and they have been historically successful in the Dak Prescott era in that conference or division. Also factored in that the midseason schedule, which didn't look hard initially, until it is hard looking back at it. I could see why it was kind of difficult because I saw a bunch of playoff teams in that little stretch of wins. But I thought the Cowboys was going to fall off too bad. But man, did they fall off a cliff. But not as bad as the New York Giants. They went 3-14, only winning, and ironically they had more road wins than they did at home, which included blowing their tank against the Indianapolis Colts. Not much to say about the Giants this year. Daniel Jones was released during their bye week, and once Daniel Jones was gone, they decided to pretty much throw in the towel for the season. But they somehow won against the Indianapolis Colts, much to the dismay of their fans. Now, my Giant prediction record was 7-10. I thought the Giants were going to be a little better. I thought, okay, maybe 2023 was not a bad year for the Giants. I mean, sure, it was a bad year, but I thought it was just one bad year. They could probably rebound, move on. Also, they had Malik Neighbors, who was one of the best young receivers in this game. However, yeah, the Giants were definitely not what the record stated. I know for a fact I actually did get their win over the Indianapolis Colts right. That's actually kind of surprising. But other than that, I had them beating the Eagles. Ooh. And yeah, Giants were bad. That's summed it up. And now it's time for me to taste my crow, eat my words, because the Eagles are not somehow, they are this year's Super Bowl champions. Much to my disgust, they went 14-3, literally dominated almost every single opponent in their path. They did get off to a slow 2-2 start, and they had a minor setback with the Washington Commanders. And many people will say the Commanders won because Jalen Hurts suffered a concussion. And even though I did not put the playoff predictions in this video, they had a pretty much dominant path to the postseason. And they did not have one good thing, they did not have to face off Detroit. That was one of the good news. Now the record I had for the Eagles was okay. I wasn't too far off with the Eagles. 12-5. I did have them winning the NFC East because of they got Saquon, they loaded up on talent. But I thought their schedule was going to be I thought the schedule was a little harder than what it has been in the past. They took on the AFC North, which is one of the toughest divisions in football. That's what I thought was going to happen. I thought they were going to suffer a few losses here and there, but I don't know, the Eagles, high end talent, bails them out week in, week out. And it look like they're going to be that same way next year. Fun stuff. And to round up the NFC East, we have the Washington Commanders. They went 12-5 last year. Honestly, the biggest surprise of the NFL was how good the Washington Commanders was. What was the bigger surprise was that they went all the way to the NFC Championship game, ending their NFC Championship drought. Now giving that to their division rival, the Cowboys. I told you Jerry's karma would come back and catch up to them this year. But this is not about the Cowboys. It's about the Commanders, mostly led by Jalen Daniels. And as Daniels became the Rookie of the Year, and his energy basically fed off with the whole team. Not to mention Dan Quinn rebounding as a coach. And Washington with one of the youngest teams in the league, and they have some of the most cap space in free agency right now. I could see this team coming back weeks to come. Although next year I think they're going to hit a brick wall. Now let's look at what I had for them last year. I had them at 6-11, and the only reason I had them at 6-11 was because they were in rebuild mode. They was in rebuild mode. I didn't know what Jaden Daniels was going to do. I didn't know he was going to do what he did. No one could have predicted that. And we all said, and I said, yeah, they're still the Commanders. They're still Washington. They're still going to be pretty bad. The doormat of the division. We all thought that. We did not see that 12-5 record coming. Washington, all I say is keep it up. And now on to the Chicago Bears. They went 5-12 last season. They actually got off to a decent 4-2 start, but then the losses started piling up. And fast. They lost a lot of games after their bye week, which even included that crazy game against rookie Jaden Daniels and against the Washington Commanders. They lost on a Hail Mary. Imagine how that season could have turned out for them. But at least they ended their season on a high note, ending their long losing streak to the Green Bay Packers. At least they could hang their hats on that. But yeah, the Bears was a complete disaster. And they couldn't manage a clock to save their life. They ended up firing Matt Eberflus mid-season, becoming the first mid-season coach change to happen in franchise history. And the Bears quickly became an unwatchable wreck. And the record I had for them was, oh god, I had them at 10-7. Why do I always hype up the Bears? They're the definition of an off-season champ. I know next year in predictions, they're not going to have that high record. I'm definitely lowering my expectations when it comes to the Chicago Bears. You just wait and see. But 10-7, I thought Caleb Williams was set up with success. He had DJ Moore. He had Rome Odunze. He had Keenan Allen. He had DeAndre Swift. The team made sure they loaded him up with weapons. But the problem was they didn't quite load up on the offensive line. It wasn't that great last year. So I thought they were going 10-7, and not to mention their defense 2023 was an improving bunch. I thought they was going to carry some games too, except that did not quite happen. Just notice the last time I'm probably going to have the Bears at a high record and surprising anyone in the NFC. Detroit Lions went 15-2, but they entered their season in a division round loss to the Washington Commanders, much to my disappointment. But they actually went a surprisingly 9-0 on the road. They swept the division 6-0. They also lost two playoff contending teams like Tampa Bay and Buffalo. But what happened in the end was, outside of a turnover-filled day in that divisional round, was, well, injuries. Injuries did caught up to them at the end of the season, and it was kind of tough for them to overcome. Lions, my record I predicted them to have, okay, 12-5, which was still like the best record in the NFC. They were my preseason pick to go to the Super Bowl this year with them in Buffalo. Or was it them? I know I had the Lions in the Super Bowl, but anyway, I thought the Lions was going to 12-5, which was the best record I had, tied in the NFC when I did it. I thought I thought the Lions were going to repeat their success. They made it to the NFC Championship game last year, and they ended up proving everyone's worth this year with their best season in franchise history. Now, their the window is still pretty open. I think they can still get there next year. They just gotta tweak some things up on defense and play a little more carefully if they want to go any higher. And I'll just leave it at that. Green Bay went 11-6, but in hindsight, they went 1-5 in division play, and they were a block kick away from going 0-6 in their division. That's pretty much my biggest takeaway from Green Bay. I know Jordan Love started off the season injured. He did came back. He ended up coming back, and it took him a little bit to get his groove on, and he did to an extent. But they did not end the season the way they should. They ended the season on a 3-game losing streak. And it was just victims of other teams being better than them. And the record that I had them as 10-7, which was I think the same record they had last in 2023, and it's about almost the same as they had this year. I just gave them one extra loss. I somehow had them losing to the Titans. That was one of the biggest outliers. Also had them losing to Seattle. Pretty much I had them splitting the division, but I did call them losing to the Chicago Bears at the end of the regular season. So kudos to a correct prediction, I guess. Minnesota went 14-3, which was a surprising record given that they lost their rookie quarterback JJ McCarthy early in the preseason. Sam Darnold had to come in, fill in the void, and he did extremely well in relief. Now, the season for them did not end the way they wanted, losing in the wild card round to the Rams that I accurately predicted. But the Vikings should hang their heads pretty high on this season. They did not see I don't think no one saw their success come. And yeah, Vikings, even though it was pretty much a predictable end, they shouldn't be too mad at how the season went. And the record that I predicted for them was, yikes, 5-12. And the reason why I predicted them at 5-12 was the quarterback situation. I knew coming in it was gonna be Sam Darnold starting, but I also factored in JJ McCarthy was gonna start some games here and there. I did not see that 14-3 season happening. No one did. No one could even call it. But also, I want to give a shout out to, and I meant to do this, but give a shout out to Brian Flores because he led that defense. That was a defensive turnaround, what he was able to do in Minnesota. Now, next year, when I do their predictions, I'm still going to be unknown about the Vikings because Sam Darnold, he's no longer on the team. Neither is Daniel Jones. They only have J.J. McCarthy on the roster. And he's going to be the big unknown. We're going to have to just wait and see what happens with Minnesota. Atlanta Falcons. This might be my funniest prediction yet. But before I get to that, they went 8-9 last year, and they were pretty much middle of the pack. Not bad on offense, not that great either. But their defense was pretty bad. Let me just say that right now. And at one point, I almost said Sam Darnold. Kirk Cousins lost his magic towards the middle portion of usually the third quarter mark of the season. He got benched in favor of Michael Penix, who he looked pretty good in the 3 games he played, but most of them were tough losses. And at the end of the day, some of it does boil down to coaching. But Falcons, they do got a young offense they could build off of. Can't wait to see how this one goes. And the record I had them predicted as, what do you know? 8-9. I was correct. But I'm not even celebrating my accurate prediction of the Falcons. The reason why I'm kind of disappointed was because I had them at 8-9, but 8-9 winning the division and going to the NFC Championship game against the Lions. Yes, that was one of the coldest takes I've ever had on my sports channel, and trust me, I've had a bunch of cold takes. And leads me to show me that I should never trust Atlanta as long as I live. Well, for the time being, at least. But at least I got the 8-9 part right. All right, Carolina Panthers. They went 5-12 this season, and it was basically kind of a tale of two seasons. For the first like 8 games, the Panthers looked like the worst team in the league. Bryce Young, he was benched at one point in relief for Andy Dalton. But once Andy Dalton himself got hurt, and Bryce Young was able to reset his mind, he came back and, what do you know, the team started looking better. Sure, it didn't result into some of the wins that they had, but one thing the Panthers were, they were competitive. Since that Week 9 game, they were competitive in all but 2 games. They got shellacked by the Cowboys and shellacked by the Bucks a second time. But they hung in there with the two best teams in the NFL, with the Chiefs and Eagles. They really gave them a fight. But the biggest takeaway of this season for the Panthers was Bryce's improvement. He looked like a totally different quarterback, and everyone is now back excited on what he could do heading into year 3. And the record that I had them as 5-12, I was pretty correct. I thought the Bryce Young improvement was going to happen in the early half of the season. It ended up happening in the second half. But I could briefly hang my head that I also accurately predicted the Panthers going 5-12. New Orleans Saints, they went 5-12, but they went up last in the division because of the head-to-head with the Carolina Panthers. But the Saints, they started off the season like they were going to be the best team in the league. 2-0, 40 burgers against the Panthers and Cowboys. But then they fell off a cliff, which included them losing to said Panthers in Week 9 and the firing of Dennis Allen. They then wound up winning the next three of the next 4 against some lowly teams. Even though the Falcons isn't a lowly team, they're just a mid team. Before losing out, Derek Carr, I think he got hurt. And once he got hurt, the team pretty much checked out the rest of the season. And now, the Saints, now being led by Kellen Moore, entering a long overdue rebuild. I think it's going to be a couple rough years for the Saints ahead. And the record that I had them as when I did my predictions, I had them at 8-9. And even though they had a head-to-head over the Falcons, I ended up giving the division to the Falcons because, well, other factors factored in. But I had them at 8-9. I thought they had just enough talent to go out there get a couple wins here and there. Saints still had one of the talented rosters. The only problem was they don't have the healthiest roster. They have often been injured and not ready to play. And also some of their stars were aging. And that's why the Saints are entering in this rebuild. So I kind of shot myself in the foot when dealing with the New Orleans Saints. In and round up the NFC South, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They went 10-7, and I would say they kind of easily won their division. It was not a good year for the NFC South, but the Bucs, they still replicated some of their success from last season. Yet again, they started off slow, but they had injuries to deal with, so that happens. But once the bye week happened, they started ripping off wins after win after win after win. Suffered a setback loss to the Cowboys before closing their season on 2 wins to get them in the postseason. They were one and done in the playoffs, but the Bucs, they're still going to be a team that's going to be at least wild card at best. 4 straight years of postseason, and the record I had for the Bucs was 7-10. I thought they were going to fall off a little bit. Thought them making the playoffs in 2023 was kind of a fluke, even though they did beat Philadelphia in that wild card round and lost to a Detroit Lions team in heartbreaking fashion in round 2. But I thought the other teams in their division improved slightly. So that's why I had the Bucks at 7-10 this year, even though they went 10-7. And finally, the NFC West, starting off with the Arizona Cardinals, they went 8-9 last year, a major improvement in what they were last year. Kyler Murray, he was back healthy, fully healthy. The team, they showed some flashes, and they formed a bit of an identity. Yes, sure, the Cardinals are still a young team. They're still very young. They still got some learning to do. But the Cardinals, they should be feeling pretty happy on where they're at. Because my prediction for them was another 5-12 season. I just felt like the other teams in their division was just better than them, which even included one of my sleeper teams in this. My sleeper team of the year was in this division, and we'll talk about them in a sec. But 5-12, I didn't thought the Cardinals were going to do too much. They ended up doing slightly better. But I will say I want to see more of Marvin Harrison. I'll leave it at that. Los Angeles Rams, they went 10-7, and surprisingly, they won the division. Now, their season did not get off to a good start. A 1-4 start to the season, but after their bye week, they only lost 3 games since. And they shouldn't feel too mad about the 2 games that they lost since then. Although that Miami Dolphin game, they lost to Miami and they didn't make the playoffs, and Seattle was pretty much a game Jimmy G started. But the Rams, I felt like the Rams were kind of better than that 10-7 record. But one thing I do want to acknowledge about the Rams is that their defense is very, very young. They're drafting pretty well so far in that unit. I know next year they should be way better than what they were this year. They're only gonna get better from here, Rams. And the record that I have for them was 7-10. The only reason I had them at 7-10 was the loss of Aaron Donald and aging Matthew Stafford and Cooper Kupp. And pretty much I was unsure about their running game at the time. And I think the 7-10, if I was correct, the Rams were one of the last teams I did predictions for. And that's how some of their games just fell out the way they fell out. So that's why I had them at 7-10. 49ers, from first to worst, they went 6-11 this year, and you could blame one thing: injuries. 49ers, what I've learned for the 49ers in the past is that they're either going to be one of 2 teams. They're either going to be a juggernaut beast of a team that's going to go to the NFC Championship game, or they're going to be a haplessly injured team that was not going to sniff the playoffs. And they ended up choosing the latter. So, 49ers 6-11. It was pretty much a disappointment. A lot of their players got hurt, especially on the offensive side of the ball. What more can I say? And if you did not factor in those injuries, they probably could have still went 12-5. I thought the 49ers was going to still be a juggernaut team. Still thought the 49ers were going to be who they were. I didn't think they was going to fall off too bad. But again, when I do my predictions, I don't factor in injuries. And injuries was what happened to the 49ers. Now, I think they broke the band up so they could get ready for that Brock Purdy contract. Yeah, big mistake. And last but not least, we have the Seattle Seahawks. They went 10-7 last year, but however, the 10-7 record was not enough to make the postseason. And if you want to know why they didn't make the playoffs, just look at Week 5. But overall, the Seahawks, they were kind of surprised that they even got the 10-7. They won a couple good games here and there, but they weren't able to win like the game. They looked good against decent teams, but when they played some of the best, they usually come up short. Albeit, even though the Giant game was just a big cluster of a mess of a game. But the Seahawks record that I had for them had them at 11-6. And if you don't know, they were my sleeper team for 2024. I thought they maintained the roster, improved in the coaching, which the coaching improved slightly. I thought it was going to be a little better. I said, you know what? Let's put Seattle in the postseason. They will be my postseason surprise team of the year. But they end up coming up just short. And now Seattle, like the 49ers, have also gutted their team and look like they're about to officially start this rebuild movement. So yeah, this pretty much concludes the NFC Revisited predictions. Tell me what y'all think in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.